There was a certain trance-like power to her stories. Where did they gain such power from? When I was a little boy, I enjoyed my grandmother's stories more than anything else. Each and every time our stories end, I was seized with fear. Soon, Grandma didn't mind scaring you. Soon thereafter, I would eagerly ask for another one. There was no rational explanation for this seeming self-torture, but I could not resist, and I was not alone. My siblings nearest in age to myself would often scramble like a litter of puppies. That's what they sounded like. Especially Hetty. My siblings nearest in age to myself would often scramble like a litter of puppies to gather around Grandma's chair when story time commenced. It was always a bit of a wrestling match to find the seat as comfortable, really as safe, as possible. Then the story would begin. On those occasions, when I was best positioned, winning in musical chairs, I would sit at her feet with my back pressed against her shins in order to see whatever may be coming in the dining room. It could be in the middle of the day, and still once the story began, the temperature would change. The walls themselves would dissolve into scenery weaved by her words. Something in me knew even then that these were not just stories. At times, the mesmerizing effect of her stories would linger like a familiar smell. I noticed that the principal's speech at the auditorium at my older brother's graduation, the broadcasters of great sports events, even the president's State of the Union speech, none of them evinced the captivating qualities of her stories. As time progressed, Grandma eventually declined. Age catches us all, as all people do towards the very end of their life, first into a sedentary existence, followed by a semi-conscious state where clarity surfaced only once every several days. No one else ever seemed to know, and I was not trying to share the information with anyone, but I could get her to tell me the story even when she was not in a totally clear state of mind. In fact, when I requested a story, Grandma would move with a mechanical effortlessness, as if by strings attached, into a half-sitting position on one elbow, and begin to tell. Finally, it became the only time she was visited by lucidity at all, was when I requested a story. Moreover, her tales began to take on theatrical proportions far exceeding their former expressions. There were fluctuations in her voice that vividly painted the soul of every character, a narrative magic that sent one's mind hurtling through the heavens, and a sense of gravity that took one straight to Hades at the merest of her whim. These stories bent the fabric of the universe itself. They became unbearably frightful. One day, with considerable trepidation, I made a request, and there was no response. I knew immediately that a certain vitality had gone, never to return. Soon after, with no more stories, Grandma passed away. The wake was in the evening. Actually, it ended up being a night because so many were traveling from afar. It was a dreadfully long service. There is something about these occasions where people get a chance at the microphone and they seem to never want to stop, as if this is the only sunshine they will ever get. Finally, I shouldn't fix this sentence. Finally, as at least one geological epoch came to a close, the service ended, and the only remaining formality was to visit the casket and do whatever it is that people do when that time comes. Some people talk to the corpse, some cry, some are too horrified to do anything but submit to the procession, anxiously hoping for the dreadful event to end. What caught my eye, however, was that there seemed to be far more people visiting the casket than had participated in the overall funeral proceedings. I do not know if it was in the tears of my eyes, for I did cry for my dear grandmother's departure, or just the effusive display of emotions from everyone, but there were people there that I had not even remotely recognized. Well, I guess it occurs at funerals. They bring us together, at least for the event. At the line I was in slowly progressed, allowing each to wince or cry as he or she pleased. I could not help but notice that the population within the room was still increasing beyond reasonable measure. Many of them were only lining the walls of the room out of the light so that their faces really could not be made out at all. While nearly everyone was wearing black, they were wearing a very dark gray, the color of shadows, and there was a distinct something, a presence of some kind coming from them, and it increased as I approached the casket. I did really not want to proceed any further, realizing that no one would understand if I fled from the room in terror. I caught hold of myself and peered into the casket. Grandma looked innocuous enough. She did not move. Maybe I thought she might. Her eyes did not open, but I perceived that I was surrounded by these people, which had been standing around the edge of the room. Suddenly, they were all standing around me at the casket, and still even close up. They were shadow-colored, and they had no faces. It was then that I realized no one else could see them. Well, then I could hear my grandmother's voice. Fear not, my child. They have always been around you. You have always known that my tales were no ordinary stories. That is because they have always taken turns talking to you through me. I looked at her. She was dead. No movement, no warmth, no nothing. The spirits were accustomed to using her voice. It will be uncomfortable at first. This is Grandma speaking to me, without moving her lips. It will be uncomfortable at first, with them struggling with one another to spin the tale this way or that. But as time passes, you will learn to balance yourself and let them join you in becoming the next storyteller of our family. They actually cannot do it without you, but you certainly do not want to deny them either. Above all, remember to always tell tales of terror, or they will become rancorous and agitated, and they may even visit their horror upon you if you do not. I wanted to fall to my knees and just cry. I wanted to jump into the casket. Who else would believe such an event? Should I explain it to them? I have told someone long ago about the various... I should have told someone long ago about the very special nature of Grandma and her stories. But I was too selfish, and I kept it all to myself. Now it, and all of them, really would be kept me alone for the rest of my life, until someone who likes my stories a great deal visits me in my casket. The same phenomenon may take place. Epilogue. It's her fault. For those who hunger for explanations, like my sister, many people in the towns at that time suggested that the deep well at the edge of my grandmother's property carried water and souls from the hills in the west, where the U.S. Army had massacred an entire Indian nation. This was supposed to be the origin of the spirits that surrounded Grandma. Others insisted that it's one paragraph left. Others insisted that the hills in the east had been the place of a long-established coven of witches, whose worst thoughts and remnants of the cauldrons that had boiled found its way into the well used by my grandmother. All I know is that I will have to live with them, wherever they are from. Every morning when I wake, they are there, waiting. They do not sleep. I often hear them clashing for no discernible reason while I drive to work. At some times during the year, they seem to retreat in unison in the distant corners of the universe of my soul, only to return with replenished vigor and exacerbated potential for telling their stories, because this, of course, was their existence.
That was amazing.
Bravo.
Good job.
My lips have never been so dry.